So the experimental uncertainties and the errors due to which leads to these uncertainties. The first one is a random error. So example, you're performing an experiment to find the resistance of a wire. So to work out the resistance of the wire, you have to connect a voltmeter to measure the voltage, and you connect an ammeter to measure the current. And the ratio between the voltage and the current, what it gives us the resistance. We measure the voltage by using the voltmeter, and using an ammeter, we measure the current, and we calculate the resistance by taking the ratio between these two quantities. Now, when this experiment is performed, example, your first value, you got 100 ohm, the unit of the resistance is ohm. But if the condition changes as you're using this wire throughout the experiment, so what will happen when the current passes through a material or a wire, it heats up because the current is having a heating effect. So because of the heating effect, the temperature might change. The temperature will increase. So if the temperature increase, you will do the same experiment with the same voltmeter and the ammeter, but you will not get the same result. This time when you perform the experiment, you repeat the experiment. Instead of getting 100 ohm, you are getting 105 ohms. So why there is a variation in the values, why you're not getting the same result as you did in the first set of result? The main reason is because of the random error. The random error, the error which arise in the experiment because of the change in the environmental condition, such as change in temperature, change in pressure, change in surrounding conditions, or due to a reaction time. So a random error arise in the experiment because of these factors. And you can reduce the random error. How it can be reduced? If you repeat the experiment and take an average result, you minimize the random error. So repeating experiment and taking an average, plotting a graph, because whenever a graph is plotted, and how you will identify that you are having a random error. So when the graph is plotted, your values will be spread out. Like the quantity, you have one of the quantity on x-axis, another one on the y-axis. So when you work out these values, your results are more spread out. So when the results are scattered or spread out, means this type of experiment is having a random error. Is it clear, the concept of random error? Any doubt in this? So we can only minimize, we cannot prevent the random error. We cannot prevent the random error because the conditions are not in our hand. The conditions might change during the experiment. So when the graph is plotted between the quantities, like you're plotting a graph between the voltage on the y-axis and the current on x-axis, you're doing an experiment. And when you plot these results, the results are scattered. Means the points are scattered. So what you will do, how you minimize this random error, by drawing a line of a best fit. So when you draw a line of a best fit, means you minimize this random error. So random error, we cannot prevent the random error. It arises in the experiment because of changing conditions such as temperature, pressure, or due to the reaction time, or when we are collecting the simultaneous readings, that also leads to random error. The green dots or the blue dots are representing the value or the data which we collect. So our data or the values which we collected are not in the same range. They are scattered. So we identify that this experiment is having a random error. So by looking at the points we use to plot the graph, we can also identify that this experiment is having a random error. If the points are scattered and you have to draw a line of best fit. Then we have the second type of the error is a systematic error. So systematic error is actually the constraint in the system, which is due to the apparatus which we are using for our experiment. For example, when we use a micrometer screw gauge, the micrometer is having two scales. One is a main scale, another one is a circular scale. So when the jaws of the micrometer are completely closed, when the jaws of the micrometer are completely closed, the main scale and the circular scale should coincide with each other. But if it does not coincide with each other, means there is an error. And what is this error? This error is known as the systematic error. So systematic error is there because of the apparatus. Same thing, we have a parallax error. So example, we have a parallax error. We are measuring a certain length. The position of eye is also important. So every time when the student is doing this experiment and he did not position the eye correctly. So as a result, there will be error in the result values. So A and C are the wrong positions. B is the correct position, which minimize this. But systematic error is there. So parallax error is also classified in the systematic error, because the student, every time when student is positioning the eye, he is not positioning the eye correctly. So this leads to an error, and we call that as a systematic error. So zero error calibrations, if the calibration is not correct, like your scale is not starting from zero, or you have a wrong position of an eye, or you did not calibrate your apparatus correctly, this all leads to systematic error. Is it clear, the difference between the random and the systematic errors? Then what will be the graph for the systematic error? For a systematic error, the values, like the graph, for example, if you're plotting a graph between the height and the time, and the graph should start from origin. The graph should start from the origin if we have h and t. But if there is a systematic error, means there is some value in the system, so it won't start from origin. It will either shift it towards the right of the main graph, or it might shift it left of the main graph. Means some value will be there from the beginning of experiment. So position A and position B are showing that the systematic error is there. So either the value will be shifted above the expected result, or the values might be shifted below the expected result. So random error is because of the changing environmental conditions, such as change in temperature, pressure, and the reaction time, where systematic error is due to the calibration, such as the zero error or the parallax error. So if I'm measuring the height of an object, so we have an object and we place a ruler next to this, and this is the position of the eye. Which error it will lead to, random or systematic? Eye is at position A. Which error it leads to, random or systematic? Wrong position of an eye.
System.
So if you have a wrong position of an eye, you did not position the eye correctly, or you have a parallax error, and parallax error will lead to systematic error. So every time you will have some extra value, added value is there. So this leads to a systematic error. Systematic error is the error either in the apparatus or the experimental technique which we are using. So if I'm not positioning my eye correctly, or my the scale, for example, we are using a ruler, but that is not starting, it's not marked zero here. I'm using it and I position my ruler and it is placed in this manner. Which error it leads to? So zero is marked here and then the other numbers. So which error it leads to? Again, it will lead to systematic error, because the error is there in the apparatus. But what if, for example, this object is temperature sensitive and the surrounding temperature increases? the temperature get higher. This is a temperature sensitive material which can change its size or shape when the temperature changes. Because of this change in temperature, which error it leads to? Random error. Or if it is subjected to a pressure, when I'm measuring it, it is subjected to the pressure. So what will happen? Which error it leads to? It leads to a random error. So random error is due to either a change in pressure, temperature, or the reaction time, and systematic error is due to the apparatus which we are using to record the results. Is it clear, the difference between the two? Anyone having a doubt or a question till this point?